Welcome to Roll for Insight, the D&D podcast where we dive into the game, the lore, and the internet's favorite arguments. Grab your dice and your character sheet, and let's roll for insight. Hello, welcome to Roll for Insight. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Mage Hand spell of the 2024 D&D Player's Handbook. So, Mage Hand is a conjuration cantrip spell for the Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard classes. Now, this is a classic spell with a lot of social and utility usages, and is very helpful for dungeon exploration too. So in this episode, we'll be covering the description of the spell from the Player's Handbook, we'll review some gameplay uses and examples you can bring to your table for how to use this spell, we'll get some ideas and opinions from the internet, and last, we'll end with some fun fact information about the spell. Okay, first topic, the spell details. It is a conjuration cantrip for the Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard classes. The casting time is 1 action. It has a range of 30 feet. The components are verbal and somatic, and the duration is 1 minute. A spectral floating hand appears at a point you choose within range. The hand lasts for the duration. The hand vanishes if it is ever more than 30 feet away from you, or if you cast this spell again. When you cast the spell, you can use the hand to manipulate an object, open an unlocked door or container, stow or retrieve an item from an open container, or pour the contents out of a vial. As a magic action on your later turns, you can control the hand thus again. As part of that action, you can move the hand up to 30 feet. The hand can't attack, activate magic items, or carry more than 10 pounds. So, this spell creates the spectral floating hand that you can control, and the key rules to understand here is the hand can do certain things like manipulate objects, open containers, and retrieve or move items, but the hand cannot do things like attack or activate magic items or carry more than the weight limit, which is 10 pounds. So you're looking at lighter objects. Now, keep in mind you have to keep the range within 30 feet. You can move it each of your turns, but this makes positioning important too, especially in exploration. And by default, the hand is visible. So that does matter for things like stealth and social situations and deception. Now, some subclasses and feats can modify this, like the telekinetic feat. So when you have an invisible mage hand flying around, that's a little bit different. But by default, it is visible. Now, the action economy, it is an action to cast, and controlling it is part of your action economy during your turn, and that means it's not free, but it is a very flexible cantrip, especially when you are in out-of-combat situations where things aren't as time-sensitive. Now, moving into some gameplay uses, this is where Mage Hand really starts to shine. It's not about the raw power of the cantrip, it's about the safe interactions you can have with the environment, and it gives you some creativity and control options. So, looking at the first option here for exploration and trap uses, and this is where it really stands out. Mage Hand is one of the best tools in the game for staying out of danger. You can do things like you can open up doors and chests from a distance. You can trigger traps safely before anyone walks through. You can drop objects on the pressure plates. You can pull levers or open suspicious containers. You can probe unstable terrain like loose tiles or false floors. And you can retrieve items from hazardous areas too. So instead of stepping into a trapped hallway, just think about sending the Mage Hand in first. And although the Mage Hand is spectral, it can carry solid objects. So this is your safety tool. You don't go in first, the Mage Hand goes in first. Now, Mage Hands are also great for dungeon and puzzle interactions, so the Mage Hand is really perfect for solving puzzles without putting yourself at risk. You can press buttons or pull mechanisms from a safe distance again. You can hold down pressure plates while the party moves through. You can retrieve keys or objects that are stuck behind bars or if they're in out-of-reach positions. And you can move objects into position for puzzle solutions. So some examples would be like you can grab a key from the other side of a locked gate without actually needing to open the locked gate first. Now, there's quite a few examples of like social and utility uses too, and this is where things can get pretty creative. Now, keep in mind the verbal and somatic components of the spell, so it is not completely undetectable. But there's lots of ideas of things you can do, like pass objects discreetly between allies. You can pickpocket or plant items on certain characters, and that is DM dependent. But you can also do things like lift coins or keys or small objects. You can open windows or doors quietly. and you can create distractions by moving objects around. So some good gameplay examples would be you can knock over a glass across the room to draw attention away from your party. And it's especially strong in infiltration or deception scenarios, but again, keep in mind the components. Now, there's a few other environmental uses as well. So Mage Hand can do a few things like getting objects out of dangerous environments. You can retrieve items from lava or water or pits. You can move burning or hazardous objects without hurting yourself. You could hold a torch or a light source ahead of the party as you move. And you can pull objects out of hard-to-reach areas. Now, one area where Mage Hand is possible to be useful, but it's not always the best, is going to be combat, because Mage Hand doesn't deal damage directly, but it can still impact a fight. So there are some situational environmental things you can do to impact, like open or closing doors mid-combat from a distance. You can also pull levers that affect the battlefield. You can retrieve dropped items or weapons. Or you can move small and light objects to create obstacles or cover. So a few examples in gameplay would be closing a door behind you to slow down a pursuer, or maybe dropping a bar across the door. You could pull a lever that changes the terrain mid-fight again, and it's not damage, but it's the battlefield manipulation that you can control from a distance. Now, there's also some utility and coordination options here, so Mage Hand can help the party function more efficiently by passing potions or items between allies, so instead of having to toss it, you can pass it. It can help deliver tools or components between players as well, and it can help move items in hard-to-reach places. There's a lot of combo effects, too, that you can look at with Mage Hand, especially with higher-level uses, and if you're going to pair it up with some of the feats or subclasses. So Mage Hand can become one of the best cantrips in the game if you combine it with things like stealth and stay completely out of danger, or combine it with distractions to control attention of certain scenarios. You can use it as a deception tool for like ghost-like effects to scare people, or leave messages or manipulate objects from a distance again. You can also consider doing a couple of combos like Mage Hand and Minor Illusion, so you have the distraction plus the interaction. Now, you might need to pair up with an ally on some of these ideas too, so you have one ally casting Minor Illusion while you cast Mage Hand. And then you can also combine Mage Hand with things like oil and fire and potions to set up your own traps safely from a distance. So Mage Hand really isn't just like the utility spell, it's a way for you to turn the risky situations into safer ones, and by playing it smart, you'll get a lot of value out of this spell. Now, to backtrack a little bit here and talk about some of the benefits and limitations here. So benefits, it is an at-will utility spell since it's a cantrip, so it doesn't cost any spell slots to use. And it works in a lot of different scenarios like exploration and social encounters and problem solving. The biggest benefit here obviously is keeping you out of danger, and it's an extremely versatile spell here. So it's one of the cantrips that's going to always be useful in your game, so you can take it at a low level and keep it all the way through. Now, some of the limitations though, it doesn't deal damage directly, and it is limited to light objects. So you can't always get away with things like having the Mage Hand bring something up high to drop it down on something below. Now, it is visible by default as well, and it does require the action economy of using your full action to cast it. The limitation of 30 feet too, a little bit of a limited range, but again, if you're moving and conscious about it, it's a fantastic spell, but it does require a lot of creativity to reach the full potential here. Okay, now next topic, the internet discussions and opinions. The internet has a lot to say about Mage Hand here. And the big point is, this is one of the best cantrips in the game. It's always useful, it never feels wasted, but it does scale with the player creativity. So it's only really as good as the player who's using it. So that's the major point of this. New players typically tend to underuse it. It sounds cool, but how do you actually have some practical uses for it? So hopefully we were able to give you some ideas today. But another popular opinion is that things like the Arcane Trickster subclass and the Telekinetic feat, that makes Mage Hand that much better, because Arcane Trickster gives you options to make the Mage Hand invisible, and it gives you the bonus action control. And it really takes the spell from the utility to the stealth and combat utility spell. And then telekinetic removes the verbal and somatic components and makes it invisible and extends the range. So when you're looking at the invisible, secretive mage hand that you can put out there with no one knowing or no one seeing, there are a lot of possibilities during those social interactions. Now, a common take as well is that the Dungeon Master rulings do matter because some tables allow those very creative uses to work and others are stricter, and that will impact how powerful this feels when you're using it. But it does come out ahead as ultimately a very useful problem-solving spell. And a lot of players really do love Mage Hand because it avoids risk, it rewards the thinking ahead in situations, and it does help create those creative solutions. So it's less about the power, and it's more about the playing smart. Now, to wrap up for today, some fun facts about the idea behind Mage Hand and manipulating objects at a distance. It actually connects to the long history of telekinesis in mythology and folklore. So in a lot of mythologies, gods and magical beings could move objects without touching them. And ancient Greek myth often describes divine power as an invisible force that acts on the world. Now, in a lot of Norse and Celtic traditions, it also includes magic users who can manipulate objects through their will or spirit energy. And Mage Hand is a lot of fun because it also mirrors a lot of techniques that are used in like stage magic and illusion. So in real life, magicians often create the illusion of objects moving on their own or items appearing or disappearing. And they do that by using hidden tools and wires and misdirection. And Mage Hand is a fun take on it. Essentially, you're turning the illusion into a reality. And you're actually doing it, and it's a lot of fun. So Mage Hand is a great spell to take. Well, that's it for this session of Roll for Insight. Thanks for listening, and thank you to all our supporters on patreon.com/rollforinsightpodcast. And we will see you next time.